I'm Danielle Premo. Welcome back to Premo Cooks. Today we're gonna make a very gorgeous lentil edamame salad. We're gonna pair it with some broccolini, strawberries, and almonds. It's gorgeous. So first thing that we wanna do is start our pot for hot water. This is going to be for our broccolini once we chop it up, which we're gonna do next. I'm just gonna put it on medium heat just to get it simmering so that we have time to chop before it boils. We already made our lentils ahead of time. I'll show you the cooked version later, but they're called gray-green lentils often. I call them brown lentils. They look brown to me. You could also use French lentils for this recipe. Anything but the red ones or the yellow ones, which fall apart really easily. Okay, so what I want to do now is chop up the strawberries, the hazelnuts, the basil, and the broccolini. Broccolini first. What we're going to do is cut them this direction. Next, I'm going to do my strawberries. I'm going to use my tiny cutting board and my tiny knife. Then I want just some thin slices. I put them all on the flat surface where I cut the tops off so that they don't slide around. All right, next, let's do the basil. I like to save my basil stems for soup stock. I always keep a bag in the freezer to put vegetable and herb parts in to make homemade soup stock with. We have a soup stock video how-to if you're interested. All right, so basil, a good way to mince it up is to lay the leaves on top of one another. You might do this in 2 rounds. Roll them up as best you can. And I like to do one chop down the middle and then as thin as possible. We're gonna end up putting this basil into our salad dressing once we make it. So you don't need it to be super finely minced. It's okay to have some bigger pieces in there because the acid and the salt are gonna cook it a little bit, which will break it down and make it smaller, easier to chew, and less likely for it to get stuck in your teeth. Smells really good. Okay, last thing is we're gonna chop the toasted almonds. Toasted the almonds already, and generally I use hazelnuts for this recipe, but I went grocery shopping for the first time in probably 2 months since we became a part of a pandemic, and they didn't have any hazelnuts, so we're gonna do almonds instead. But if you can source hazelnuts, they're a really awesome addition and garnish to this salad. I have a video on toasting nuts also, if you'd like to look at that. All right, now we have our toasty nuts all chopped up, and it's okay if you have different sizes because when you're using these in this recipe, you're gonna garnish with them. And I've said this before, I'll say it again, but all these little tiny bits, those are gonna help soak up some of the dressing, and then the bigger bits are gonna be a nice crunchy addition to your salad. All right, we have our broccolini chopped up, and now we're gonna do a quick boil or a blanch. We have boiling water. I put a teaspoon of salt in here, and now it's at a rolling boil. What I'm gonna do is pop in the broccolini. It's not gonna take very long. Blanching veggies takes really no time at all for most, and you can look up online different times for different veggies. Broccolini is pretty tender and soft already, so it's not gonna take us too long. And we want it to still have a crunch when we're done. We do not want to overcook it. So I'm gonna set a timer for 3 minutes, and then what I'm gonna do at 3 minutes is take this edamame that we've defrosted, and I'm gonna toss that in there just to nuke it for a second. So timer, 3 minutes. Nope, that's 39. Okay, 3 minutes. I'm gonna add in my edamame just for 30 seconds or so. And now I'm gonna turn the heat off. I'm gonna grab some mittens. I'm gonna take this over to the sink. I'm gonna strain out this hot liquid and then rinse it with cold water. Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Gorgeous. So what I'm gonna do next is this broccolini and the edamame, we just ran under cold water to stop the cooking process. Now I want to add a little flavor enhancer, which is coconut aminos. And if you stick around after we're done making this recipe, I will explain what coconut aminos is in the afterthought section. So we're going to do 2 teaspoons of coconut aminos. Give this a stir. And then we'll let it sit and marinate in there while we move on to making the salad dressing. Next step. Now that we have tossed our broccolini and edamame in the coconut aminos and set that aside, the last step that we have before we compose our salad is to make the salad dressing. I'm going to move over to my cutting board for that. I have everything measured out. So this dressing, really quite simple. I already measured out in here. I have 1/4 cup of red wine vinegar. And now I'm going to add in maple syrup. I specifically recommend using grade A dark maple syrup. And I can tell you about that in my afterthoughts. We're going to do 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/4 teaspoon pepper, 1 teaspoon brown mustard, and then olive oil. Because I'm going to be using my immersion blender to emulsify this, I will not be using a whisk. I'm just going to add the olive oil in and then get my trusty immersion blender over here and emulsify this. As always, I like to do a taste before I commit to pouring it over the salad. And that's perfect. I nailed it. All measurements are right on point. So the last thing that we're going to do with this salad dressing is fold in the basil leaves that we minced up earlier. Now we have a nice, beautiful basil-y red wine maple dressing. Now I would like to grab all of the goods that we're going to put together to toss in this dressing. All right, so we have our cooked gray-green, aka brown lentils, our broccolini and edamame tossed in coconut aminos. I'm going to give this a stir real quick. Then I'm going to fold in these beautiful strawberries. When you're combining this salad, one recommendation that I would have is to use a spatula as opposed to a wooden spoon or a metal spoon, because lentils are very soft and they fall apart easily. So if you're using a harder utensil, it's going to break apart those lentils and they won't hold their shape as well. So now that that's combined, I'm going to pour on this dressing. And after it's nice and mixed up, at this point you can serve it or chill it and let it marinate in those flavors for a bit before serving it. But I'm going to make up a plate, or a bowl rather. I love the green of the edamame and the broccolini and the strawberries all together. So gorgeous. And then I'm going to top it with the toasted almonds that I've chopped up. Ideally though, like I said, if you can source hazelnuts are a really awesome addition to this salad. Really accents all the other flavors. You eat with your eyes first, so it's always important to make your dishes look pretty. Voila! I bet it's delicious. Really good. It's a winner. Yum. Now our salad is done. I'm going to answer some questions about the ingredients that we used for this lentil edamame salad. First is broccolini. What is it, and can you substitute for something else? So broccolini is a crossbreed between broccoli and Chinese broccoli. So the broccoli that most of us are used to, you get the florets from that in the broccolini, but then you get these long stems that are really tasty and easy to use, and you don't have to peel the skin off of them like you would with regular broccoli. So I love it for this salad because you can blanch it really quickly. It has a nice crunchy texture, little sweetness. It's not as bitter as traditional broccoli. But if you wanted to substitute it, you could use broccoli. It'll be a little bit different, and once you mix the salad up, broccoli is going to tend to get softer and fall apart faster in the salad, so it won't keep as long. But you could also substitute asparagus, because the stem of broccolini reminds me a lot of that, and they have a similar flavor and they have a very similar texture as well. So asparagus would be my first choice for substituting. Second question is, what are coconut aminos? and coconut aminos, which we used in the salad dressing. It is made from the sap of the coconut tree, and it's supposed to be an alternative to tamari or soy sauce, and that's how I became familiar with it. Folks that have soy allergies can't use tamari or soy sauce, so the coconut aminos are a salty, savory condiment that's very similar, but it does have a lot of sweetness to it, so you can't substitute it exactly the same, but it's found its own purpose in my kitchen. So it's really nice with this salad because it complements the sweetness of the broccolini and the edamame, which leads me to what is edamame? Edamame is an immature soybean, and you mostly find it in pods when you go to a Japanese restaurant. You pop them out. They're an appetizer. But they also, you can, in the freezer section of your local health food store, you can find pre-potted, out of their shell. They're already out of their pods, and they're just loose edamame beans, and they're super tasty. They have a buttery mouthfeel. They're kind of sweet. They also have this crunchy feeling even though they're buttery in your mouth, so they're really vibrant in color. They're gorgeous. They're also one of the very few complete proteins of plant foods. So lentils are another that have a lot of protein in them, but they're not a complete protein on their own. Edamame is awesome because it's a complete protein all on its own. So those, look for it in your local health food store. I feel like there's something else I should say about edamame. I guess that's it. Okay, what are the differences in grades of maple syrup? I referenced in the dressing we used grade A dark maple syrup. That's my personal preference. And the grading system for maple syrup is confusing. It's all grade A for the most part. You have grade A light, grade A amber, grade A dark, and I think there's some other options within maple syrup, but the one that you've most frequently used that people are familiar with is grade A light, which is really light in color, sugary sweet. It's more refined, and that's a breakfast syrup essentially. But grade A dark is really dark in color. It's a little more expensive to purchase at the store, but it has a mapley flavor. It's darker in flavor. It's not as sugary sweet, and it has a lot more minerals and antioxidants in it because it's less refined. So I love using it for cooking. It's great as a finishing touch to a soup or a dressing. So that's something I always have on hand in my kitchen. So the last thing is lentils. I'm not going to cover in this afterthought section. If you want to learn more about lentils, we have a how-to video available for you to link to in the description below. Have fun cooking. Bye. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy Premo Cooks and think I'm a total dork, then hit those buttons down below, the like and the subscribe, and share us with your friends. Thanks. Do you want to be famous?